Buddy Ryan Thomas here on the new and improved edition of the Crowd Assist podcast. Show sponsor Picasso's Pizza, folks, for the best pizza, wings, Buffalo signature specials. Picasso's Pizza is the place to go. Order takeout. It is an awesome experience, especially if you've never ordered from Picasso's before. It's a new experience, and I guarantee you will enjoy it. Folks, I'm joined by my co-host, Jake Watkins. This is our first show together face-to-face from a distance, right? Face-to-face from a distance.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. If that's a thing, that's what it is.
I guess that's the new way that we got to do these shows now. It is what it is during the day and age that we're living in. A lot of stuff going on, though, in the National Football League. Jake, we had a big trade go down in the AFC East. The New York Jets sent Jamal Adams from the Jets to the Seattle Seahawks. Almost said Seattle Mariners. I'm in baseball mode. Seattle Seahawks netting themselves 2 first-round picks in the next 2 years. They also got a third and sent a fourth away. And the safety, not too familiar with the safety.
Yeah, Bradley McDougald. You could tell me how to say his name, and I'll believe you, just because I've never heard of the guy, to be completely honest. But you know, he's a respectable starting safety in the NFL. You know, if he's the guy that you have starting, you're not going to be upset about it. You can rely on him to give you decent production week in and week out. But obviously, you know, not someone who can replace Jamal Adams, who's obviously leaving. I don't think it's news to anybody, but he's leaving because of his feelings towards the head coach, Adam Gase. And so, you know, I saw Tre'Davious White tweeted that, you know, he knew this was coming for the past, 2 weeks or so. So it's really not a shock to anyone that this finally happened. But it's really nice to see him not only get out of the AFC East, but get out of the AFC too. So, you know, it's nice that we'll only see him once instead of 2 times this year.
Right, we will see him once. We do play the Seattle Seahawks this year, and obviously for the Jets, as we touched on it here, there was a very bad situation brewing between Jamal Adams and the powers that be within the New York Jets organization, Adam Gase, and it's a recurring theme that we're hearing rumblings of here in Buffalo, that the Jets players just don't really seem to be translating well with Adam Gase's coaching style. There's just a disconnect there. We could speculate all day on what that is. I personally simply believe it's just because he's not a head coach. He's not capable of being a head coach. Shouldn't be a head coach. It's another time, another discussion for another time. But Jamal Adams, though, they did maximize this trade, Jake. Right? They got a lot in return for a player that didn't want to be there.
Yeah, and especially, you know, if you compare it to, you know, maybe they didn't get the haul that the Bears gave up for Khalil Mack, but if you look at what Pittsburgh gave up for Minkah Fitzpatrick, they only gave up 1 first-round pick. And, you know, obviously Minkah had his ups and downs also under Adam Gase, funny enough. But, you know, it's interesting to see the stark contrast in the return value for each of these safeties. But, you know, something else that we kind of have to note is that, and it could be a reason why, you know, the Bills were willing to get rid of their first-round pick from this year, is that, you know, for the drafts to come, we don't know if we're going to be in a situation like this with the pandemic going on where, you know, new people coming into the league aren't going to have that, you know, all the entire summer to acclimate themselves with the offense, get familiar with, or the defense in this case, you know, get familiar with their teammates and everything. So, you know, first-round picks and picks in general, I'm guessing that people are kind of devaluing them for the next year or so just because of the uncertainty.
Yeah, there's a lot of uncertainty, no doubt about it. And obviously, as we kind of inch closer to the season, we've been very excited about this Buffalo Bills offseason. Everybody in Buffalo has been excited about this offseason, but this is an offseason unlike any other. We're going to dive into it in this show, but next up on the show that I wanted to really dive into in terms of Buffalo sports, being that this is a Bills show, Buffalo sports, there's 2 names that are giant in Buffalo sports right now. Jack Eichel, Josh Allen. They did this Captain Circle show. Did you catch that, Jay?
I caught the first episode with Josh and Jack. Yeah.
Yeah. What were your thoughts on that? I'm wondering if some of your takeaways were the same as mine.
Yeah. So yeah, my first takeaway is that just when I see Josh Allen and Jack interacting on, the same program, it brings me back to Saturday morning cartoons when I'm like 7 years old and I wake up and the Jimmy Timmy Power Hour's on, or like, whatever Sweet Life on Deck or Sweet Life as Zach and Cody did with whoever.
Jimmy Timmy Power.
Yeah, I swear, like that's how I feel. I feel like worlds are colliding, and it makes me giddy as a child. But real takeaways. It's just it's very hard to watch the conversation between Josh and Jack and not really notice the stark difference in just how they communicate, and whether that's that Jack is in the hockey mode, like he's giving a hockey interview, like, yeah, I mean, you got to get pucks to the net, and some things don't always work out, and then Josh is just so lively, and he's someone who like you want to talk to, and so it's because Josh is like, I'm gonna take my teammates out to Applebee's, and he makes an Office reference, and Jack doesn't even laugh. So and you can see I'm clearly that matters to me.
You're representing, yeah. And yeah. I was gonna say too, in terms of this whole Zoom era that we're living in, I think you might have one-upped me on the backdrop. I like the backdrop, no doubt about it on my end, but the backdrop on your end, I think you might have one-upped me a little bit. So.
Yeah, Stanley's been doing this crossword for months now. So if you know 37 across, please give him some insider info.
Yeah, for anyone that's watching this, please help Stanley out. He needs it. So, but yeah, and as far as I guess I could say the same thing too. As far as the captain circle goes, you look at Jack Eichel has had so much talent come in the building and then come out of the building with Ryan O'Reilly, Evander Kane, to name those two. Those are the two that really pop out at me. In terms of the success that they've had since they've left the Sabres, especially in the case of O'Reilly. And then for Josh Allen, he hasn't really experienced that talent coming in and then walking out the door. Like, what if, and I'm, obviously spitballing here, but it'd be like if Stephon Diggs comes into Buffalo and then in a couple of years he's gone. That would obviously hurt Josh Allen, right? That would frustrate him. So you can kind of understand and kind of see within that show that Jack Eichel might be a little bit more short with his responses due to the fact that he just wants to get to playing, and I think there is a big uncertainty with hockey as to when they're going to play.
Yeah, no, like I believe there's 49 days until football starts, and with Jack, like the NHL playoff bubble might not even be done by that point, by the time football is over. So, or by the time football starts. So if I were him, I would be kind of, upset just in general too, because, this is his livelihood. This is what he's worked for his entire life for. His time with the Sabres hasn't gone well. They've been the last team to be kicked out of this new playoff format for this year. They dropped back in the draft lottery too. So just with everything that he's experienced, and now, all of the rumblings of the inner turmoil in the Sabres organization. Meanwhile, if you look at, the Bills, you have Lorenzo Alexander and Eric Wood and former Bills and current Bills all like going to Twitter when we found out that their like safety protocols got approved. They're like, yeah, this is no shock to me. They always put the players first. And so many people, just rushed to, talk about how great the Bills are at caring about their players. Meanwhile, we haven't really seen the Sabres organization prioritize any of their players, especially Jack Eichel.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And I think it was a nice little, inside look at the situations that both players. Josh Allen's so joyful and so happy, and Jack Eichel's kind of like, let's keep this a little short. I got things that I need to focus on hockey wise. He wants to win. This is, he's been here for 5-6 years. Josh Allen's only been here. He's entering his third season. So the honeymoon phase for Jack Eichel is somewhat over, and he wants to get some wins. So I don't blame him. I understand it. I just thought it was very interesting to talk about on the show. Very cool show, though, by the way. I really enjoyed the Captain Circle, and there's other episodes that are coming out in the coming weeks, and that'll be fun for Buffalo fans to tune into.
Yeah, definitely.
So you got any questions for me? I feel like you might have a question for your boy RT here.
Yeah, I think moving on here, we talk about the Captain Circle. It's not really newsworthy, not really Bills worthy, not a whole lot going on. But
I thought it was a nice little caveat, though.
Nice little throw in. But here to talk Bills, talk some Bills.
Let's talk some Bills.
Let's talk some Bills. So, let's with all of the uncertainty of the preseason and everything, we're going to have no preseason games now. Where do you see this kind of having a big impact on, the Bills roster come opening day, and who's going to make it?
I would say that the fact that there is no preseason is actually really going to hurt a lot of these rookie players in terms of how they're going to gel with the new supporting cast that they're playing within, especially 2 rookie wide receivers on this team, and Hodgins and Gabriel Davis. But defensively, you have AJ Epinesa, who they drafted in the 2nd round. I'm really looking forward to seeing how he'll gel in general, but especially gel in general with the situation the way that it is now, how this defense kind of pieced itself together. This defense, no secret, I'm stating the obvious here, but this defense was pretty formidable these last couple seasons, and it actually could be better, heading into year 3. I'm very excited to see what AJ Epinesa can bring to the table. I'm excited to see what a healthy Harrison Phillips can bring to the table. And also veterans on this team. Really wondering what Josh Norman's got left. I think that's one of the biggest questions that we could ever ask ourselves heading into this Buffalo Bills season.
Yeah, and, especially with this kind of weird race for the second cornerback spot, It feels to me like, without preseason auditions, whatever you'll call them, we're lucky that we have the schedule we do at the beginning of the year. Like, we open against the Jets and then Miami, and then our third game is against the Rams, and it's definitely tougher than the first 2, but it's not like Jared Goff is a quarterback to really worry too much about. So given that that's probably one of the biggest question marks, the opening to the schedule is like very, very important for us to be able to figure out who that number 2 corner is going to be.
Right, and outside of Norman, there's really no name that jumps out at you outside of Levi Wallace, who was spotty. There were a lot of moments last year where he was behind on a play, or maybe he overread the coverage a little bit and tried to get a run stop instead of just following his receiver. You saw a lot of that, and I really think in terms of just looking at the positions, wide receiver wise, I would say Gabriel Davis and Isaiah Hodgins would be tough to decide which ones will make the roster. From 4 to 7, right? 7 receivers, 4 to 7. Brown, Beasley, Diggs obviously are locked in at 1, 2, 3, and then you have the rest that are kind of just waiting in the wings.
Yeah, and I think Gabe Davis, even though he was taken 2 rounds ahead of Isaiah Hodgins, he was in the 4th, Hodgins was in the 6th. And this is something a lot of local media members and national media members have said too, is that between Chris Trapasso, Sal Capaccio, whoever, that it's just amazing that it wasn't reversed. Isaiah Hodgins, with the seasons he's had, especially the last one, he had almost 1,200 yards, he had 13 touchdowns, he had over 80 catches. He could have been a 4th round pick, and Gabe Davis might have been a little bit of a reach. Especially with the receivers the Bills already have, Gabe Davis is more of that Stephon Diggs, John Brown type of player, that vertical threat who's a good route runner. But he has 2 people in the top 3 wide receivers that he needs to beat out for touches. So if I were to guess, he'd probably go on the practice squad this year. He'd probably just take a year to learn from these guys, and then maybe we hope that he develops into a really good receiver. Meanwhile, Isaiah Hodgins, he's more of that, big body, go up and get it guy. And that can spell trouble for Duke Williams.
Yeah, and, 4 to 7, you have Hodgins, Davis, then you lump in all the guys that they've had these last couple of years. Andre Roberts, somewhat of a one-dimensional guy, dare I say. He's really only predominantly been a returner here so far, and really for the majority of his career with the Jets. And then you have Duke Williams, who, they kept him a secret. It was like the mantra, keep Duke Williams a secret. During the season, I'm thinking Josh Allen needs some guys with some length to him. The receivers, not Diggs, Brown and Beasley were phenomenal for Buffalo last year. I don't think that could be understated or overstated enough. but you needed a guy with a little bit of length. And I think these two new additions with Hodgins and Davis, although I think Hodgins might be slightly better, I agree with you on that. Yeah. For Duke Williams to make this team, it's going to be tough.
Yeah, and, you said keep Duke Williams a secret, and I love, I'm a big Duke Williams fan. I love the work that he's put in from making it to the NFL to not really sticking and grinding it in the CFL and making it back here. The Tennessee game last year was huge for him. It was a really feel-good moment to see him score that touchdown in that game. But, keeping him a secret wasn't really an option in the Houston game because he was just he really kind of let us down there. And I was there. It was really, it was just disappointing to see because he made a few really good catches, but also just the ones that you expect your receivers to make, he wasn't really capable of. So if I'm the GM or the coach and I'm thinking, all right, who am I going to take? This grizzled, this veteran who's been, up and down throughout his career and has really had to work for it, or this young 22-year-old receiver who we just spent draft capital on, I'm inclined to say the latter.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And in terms of, the defense, as I go back to the defense, there's definitely additions that were made to that defense that I do think make them a little bit more dynamic. Not just Epinesa and not just the veteran gamesmanship that Mario Addison has played with the last 4 years. He's had a great last 4 years. What is it? 35 to 39 sacks in 4 seasons. That's ridiculous. That's phenomenal numbers. If he could add on to that production for let's just say the next 2 years and just be an extremely productive player for just these next couple seasons while we're kind of figuring out what Epinesa has and figuring out maybe if we have to add another body at that position in the middle rounds in the coming drafts, man, that would be a huge value addition for this team. And another guy I like is AJ Klein as well.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, I remember when we signed AJ Klein. You didn't you have a tweet featured in a thing about the Bills?
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, I did. I actually forgot about that. Thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, that was pretty awesome. I tweeted as soon as I heard that they signed him that I just think that he's a Sean McDermott guy, that he plays with that edge, plays with that spirit that has been embraced by guys like Trey White, guys like Micah Hyde, guys like Jordan Poyer. And they've thrived in this defense where, if Trey White went to another team, I think he's a talented player. But this scheme is so great for guys like Trey White. It lets a guy like him just really feast on a wide receiver. Whereas with AJ Klein being this sideline-to-sideline running back, I'm very excited to see what he brings to the table. And to see that tweet featured on the Buffalo Bills website was pretty sweet. It's pretty awesome. So, one for RT.
And I don't think that we can get out of talking about players who need to impress in the preseason without bringing up Christian Wade. Because, last year people were like, why is he going to make the team? Well, because he ran to the middle of the end zone and didn't get the touchdown because he still is in like that rugby zone. So, I don't think that he's obviously not going to get a spot over Singletary or Zach Moss. But, if you were to say that he got a spot over either TJ Yeldon or Tywan Jones, would you be surprised?
I would, yeah. I would be surprised, and I would be pleasantly surprised. I'm not trying to kick a man while he's on a high. I mean, think of it in this terms. This guy played on another side of the world in a completely different sport, comes to Buffalo, which is like, looked at as, I love Buffalo, but on the outside, it's looked at as like the Siberia of the NFL. He gets brought into this organization and, he had a few cool moments in the preseason. He would have to really drastically, though, change his awareness on the football field in order to get to that point. I'm rooting for him. I think it's a really cool story. It would be a great story if he does achieve what he's looking to achieve and making this roster, but I just don't see it, Jake. I think that guys like Tywan Jones who have been on NFL rosters, including Buffalo before, and some of the other guys that they'll bring in to make competition for Wade, I think will be a little bit more football savvy. But then again, he's had an off season to prepare, but has he had an off season to prepare? So a lot of questions with Christian Wade, I think.
Yeah, and since we're on the topic of running backs, we'll move into a bit of fantasy running back talk because my buddy Chris, he just joined us as a fantasy writer. And my buddy Chris Alemo, super good guy. I've been in a fantasy league with him for a few years, and he kicks ass every single year. So if there's someone you're going to get advice from, this is one of the guys you want to read.
He kicks ass every single year, huh? I gotta take a stab at this guy.
Yeah, he might give you a run for your money.
He might meet my match.
So we'll dive into this a little bit. He put up his top 5 rookie running backs. Put out an article on TrainwreckSports.com. Coming in at number 5, he has Deandre Swift. Number 4, he has your boy Zach Moss. 3, J.K. Dobbins, Clyde Rizzolaire at 2, and then at number 1, he has Jonathan Taylor. Now, Ryan, I don't know if you've had the chance to review his article, but maybe first reactions to his top 5 here.
I could see why he would throw down the top 5 in that way. I personally feel if I were to put my own top 5 together and to kind of compare, I look at J.K. Dobbins and personally, I would put him at number 1 as a fantasy running back heading into 2020.
Really?
And I say that I really love the draft pick, the player, and I love where he went. I love that he went to Baltimore. He's in a run-first offense, essentially with Jackson as well as Mark Ingram. And, it kind of goes without saying. I think it was mentioned in this article, though, that he could possibly play like an Alvin Kamara role within this Ravens offense that, Mark Ingram was the RB2 to Alvin Kamara in New Orleans. So, maybe we'll see that type of production from J.K. Dobbins. I know one thing, when he's got the ball in his hands in space, if you're in a points per reception league, he could put up big numbers as a rookie if they use Mark Ingram as more of a in-between-the-tackles guy. So I think there's a lot of value in Dobbins. I personally like Clyde Edwards-Helaire at 2 for me. I would put him at 2, just based on how he fits into Andy Reid's, somewhat West Coast style offense. It's almost a new age West Coast style, though, with the wild man that is Pat Mahomes. And then, my boy Zach Moss at number 3. I think he's going to be a touchdown vulture. I think he'll take some touchdowns away from Josh Allen. And we've talked about it before. Josh Allen's looked at as like the goal line back for the Buffalo Bills. I think Zach Moss was a massive upgrade, with all due respect to Frank Gore, future Hall of Famer. Zach Moss, I think, will definitely fill those shoes very nicely. So I got him at 3. And then Jonathan Taylor and Deandre Swift at 4 and 5. I'm not really too high on Taylor. Went to Green Bay. Is that right?
It was in Indy.
Oh, in Indy. That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I'm not really too high on Swift in Detroit. I'm wondering what's going to happen with Kerryon Johnson. And then with Indy, bringing in Phillip Rivers, I don't know what to think of Indy. So that's kind of why I have those guys at 4 and 5.
Yeah, Jonathan Taylor, I was shocked to see that Chris had him at 1, but, he has some good rationale behind it. So if you guys are interested, definitely go read his article. But, as far as Deandre Swift goes, I think he could easily walk into like 65% of the running back touches there. So, like, I'm kind of bullish on Deandre Swift. I think he could be a pretty good value if you're getting him in like the 8th or 9th round like he's going right now. But someone I really don't want to touch on this list here is Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Like, and it's nothing against
him. Not a fan,
him.
huh? Not a fan.
He was probably the most electric running back in college football last year. Like, don't get me wrong. He's a fantastic player. But he's also walking into an offense that is either going to be extremely friendly to him from a production standpoint, or he's kind of just going to fall into the fold of which running back is going to be great this week. Which running back are we going to use this week? Like, let's not forget Andy Reid last year, when LaShawn McCoy kind of really showed he didn't have a whole lot of gas left in the tank. He put him out there for 2 or 3 games, and then Mahomes just threw for 500 yards so they could win the game.
Yeah.
So it's and it's not like his running back competition there now. It's not like he's around scrubs. Like Damian Williams could have won Super Bowl MVP. I'm not going to say he's like the best running back in the world.
What a get that was! What a get that was for the Chiefs. I mean, really, with the Kareem Hunt fallout and what he did for them in the playoffs and in the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
Come on, He does not get the credit that he deserves.
Absolutely not. So, if you were to tell me that Clyde Rizzolaire walked in there and got, more than 55% of the touches at running back, I wouldn't be shocked. But at the same time, like, if you're getting more than 55%, then, like, that's not – 55 is not a big number. That's not what you're looking for a running back that you're taking in the second or third round right now, like where he's going in fantasy drafts. So, for me, I want to pump the brakes a little bit. Also want to pump the brakes. I love the Bills. I'm a Bills fan. Pumping the brakes on Zach Moss from a fantasy perspective. It's nothing personal, but like if he's going to play that Frank Gore role, and we don't know if he's going to take those touches away from Josh Allen at the goal line, he'll be a more efficient Frank Gore. Don't get me wrong, but it's hard to see someone who plays that like heavy bruiser, style of running back to be an immediate producer in fantasy, especially when he's fighting for touches pretty heavily right now, but. At the same time, I could see him being one of the best fantasy running backs for rookies this year. It wouldn't surprise me at all.
I just see so much upside in terms of how Brian Daboll couldn't get rid of Frank Gore if he tried. Like, Brian Daboll wanted to give the ball to Frank Gore in moments where he should have been giving the ball to Devin Singletary. I can only hope that now that Frank Gore is off the field for Buffalo and playing for the Jets, that Brian Daboll says, hey, I want to give this ball to Zach Moss. And Devin Singletary in space, I don't think we saw enough of that last year.
No.
And I definitely think we will see more of that. And I'm really excited to see how Daboll uses Zach Moss and uses guys like Stephon Diggs as well. And I see Zach Moss being one of the better power backs in the league for a little bit. I think that was actually the best value pick for the Bills in this year's draft. No doubt about it.
Really?
Yep.
Yeah, I can't get over the value that AJ Epinesa had in the third round, but I can't blame him for
the second. Yeah,
Zach Moss. Yeah.
Well, second, I expected Epinesa to fall there. Moss, I thought would go a little bit earlier in the third round, whereas Buffalo got him in like the 80 range, or even late second. I thought Moss could go in, and I just really like the guy. I love everything he's said so far. He seems like he's really hungry and ready to make a difference.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
That's all I have on these running backs, and I know that's the last thing we got for the show. I'll give you last licks here. Anything you want to add on here?
Definitely enjoyed the show with you, Jake, and for everyone that's tuning into this, you'll be seeing more of the Crowd Assist podcast with myself, Ryan Thomas, and Jake Watkins as well. I said at the top of the show, we'll say it at the end of the show, this show is sponsored by Picasso's Pizza for the best pizza in Western New York, or take out from Picasso's. So I'm very pumped up to do these shows every single week with you, Jake, and look forward to talking again next week.
Oh, yeah, man. Thanks for having me on. Thanks for bringing me aboard. This train never stops.
Train never stops. The Crowd Assist podcast will be back next week, and I can't wait to chat with you.
Hell yeah, man. Have a good week, everybody. Thank you for tuning in.